transformation is an operation that maps a pre-image onto an image. Okay, there are 3 transformations. Okay, the first one is a reflection. Okay, that's also considered a flip. So you're flipping your image. A rotation. Okay, that's a turn. And a translation. Okay, that one is a slide. So there are 3 different transformations that we are going to go through. Shh. Hey, you don't get to just start talking just because I need to take attendance again. Alright, so with these flags, we want to name each transformation that maps the lighter flag onto the darker shaded flag. Okay, so the lighter shaded one are these top ones, the darker ones on the bottom ones there. Okay, so in number 1, this transformation, if I'm going from this point to this point here, okay, so from one point to the same point on that image, that's a slide. Okay, so it's sliding from one to the other, so that's a translation. Okay, so same thing for this pre-image and image. From this point to this point, or this point to this point. Okay, it is turning to get over there. Okay, so it is a rotation. Okay, and it'll rotate around this point here in the center. Okay, so this would be your center point. It's rotating all the way around to that point. The last one, number 3, if I go from here to here, okay, we have that same point. That will be a reflection. Okay, and it'll reflect over this line here. Okay, so a reflection is just that mirrored image. Okay, so in these problems here, the lighter flag is called the pre-image. Okay, so the pre-image is that one you started with. And the darker flag is called the image. Okay, so these are rigid transformations because they keep their size and shape. So what you'll notice about these transformations is you still end up with the same flag. It's just in a new position. Okay? So it still keeps that same size and that same shape it originally started with. Okay, so those are called isometries. Okay, so if it keeps the same size and shape as it moves, it is an isometry. Okay, so today what I want to go over is reflections. Okay, solely reflections. We're not looking at rotations or translations yet. We'll do those in the next couple of days. Okay, so a reflection or a flip is a transformation in a line of reflection. Okay, so you do need a line of reflection in order to reflect your image. Okay, the point before the reflection is called the pre-image. And the point after the reflection is the image. Okay, the pre-image and the image are the same distance from the line of reflection. Okay? So that's why I gave you a ruler when you walked in. Okay, so those points are the same distance from that line of reflection. So in the example below, what I want to do is take that pre-image. Okay, I'm going to label the points A, B, and C. Okay, and I want to reflect that pre-image over this line of reflection. Okay, so again, you do need a line of reflection in order to reflect that pre-image. So, since each of those points have to be that same distance from that line of reflection, you're going to take your ruler, and I'm just going to do point B first here. I'm going to measure how far away point B is from that line of reflection. Okay, so you have, I'm using millimeters just to make it a little more exact. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-ish millimeters. So that's what I want to measure across that line of reflection. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-ish. Okay, so I have this new point here. Okay, that is your image point. We label those with a prime symbol. Okay, so it has that little apostrophe next to that letter. Okay, so this will be B prime. Now you want to do the same thing with points A and C. So if you haven't started those 2 points already, go ahead and start finding how far away those are from that line of reflection as well. Okay, so I'm going to move on to point A here. Okay, and again, after you find that point, you do label that point A prime. Okay, it has to have that apostrophe. Same thing with C. Okay, after you have all of your points, you can connect those. Okay, so here's our pre-image. So the image that we started with. Okay, so again, your pre-image is your starting image. Okay, and then our ending one here is that image. Okay, and again, those are labeled with those prime points. Questions on how I did this one? Again, it has to be that same distance from that line of reflection. All right, so looking at the back then, okay, now we're looking at figures on a coordinate grid, okay? So in the next few examples here, we want to reflect the triangle in the given line. Okay, so that given line for example 3 is the y-axis. Okay, so we need to look at the y-axis. And we want to reflect over that line. So I'm just going to highlight that line of reflection so I remember which one I'm reflecting over. Okay, if you don't need to, You don't have to. It's just kind of easier to look at then. So, on the coordinate grid, you don't need to use your ruler. So what you can do here, if I have point G, it has to be that same distance from that line of reflection. So point G is 1 unit away from the line of reflection. So I'm going to count 1 more unit away. Okay, and that will be G prime. Same thing with point F. Point F is 1, 2, 3 units away. So I'll count 3 units from that line of reflection in the other direction. So we have 1, 2, 3. And F prime will be here. Last one is H. H is 2 units from that line of reflection. So count 2 units in that opposite direction for H prime. After you find all of those points, you can go ahead and connect them. If you want, use your ruler. If you don't, that's fine. Okay, and here would be your image. Okay, so that would be your final image there. Questions on example 3? Alright, so looking at example 4, the line that they want you to reflect in is the x equals 1 line. Okay, do you remember if that is vertical or horizontal? It is vertical. Okay, so when you get an x equals line, it is a vertical line. If you get a y equals, that is a horizontal line. Okay? Shh. So, since this is x equals 1, that line will be right here. Okay, so that is the line that I want to reflect my pre-image over. So again, looking at point G is 2 units away from that line. So I'm going to count 2 more units in the opposite direction, and that will be G prime. Moving to point F, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 units away from that line. So counting 1, 2, 3, 4 more units in the opposite direction to get F prime. Next we have H. Okay, H is 1, 2, 3 units from that line. So 1, 2, 3 units in that opposite direction. And then I can connect all 3 points and create that triangle. Okay, and here would be your image. Okay, so it does pay to write in that line so you know where you're counting to. Okay, questions on example 4? Okay, then I want you guys to do example 5. Okay, the line you're reflecting in is y equals 2. So find where that is and reflect each of those points over that line. Alright, so for number 5, your line of reflections should be horizontal. Okay, it should be a horizontal line. So where y is equal to 2, reflect each of those points of that pre-image triangle over that line of reflection to hit your prime coordinate points. And then your image. Okay, so make sure yours looks about the same. Okay. Then before I go over number 6, I want you to look at the table at the bottom. So here are reflection types. Okay, so if you're reflecting in the x-axis, this point right here is your pre-image point, so your original. How you change your original is you just take the opposite of y. Okay, so if I have a coordinate point 3, -1, to reflect it in the x-axis, you just need to take the opposite of your y coordinate. Okay, so x stays the same, y becomes the opposite, so 1. So for some of these, you don't even need to graph it. Okay, so if you're reflecting in the x-axis, you just take the opposite sign of your y value. In the y-axis, so if your line of reflection is the y-axis, you take your original coordinate, and this time you take the opposite of your x value. Okay, so if I have a coordinate point 4, 2, guys, since I'm taking the opposite of the x value, that would be 4. So now it would be -4, 2. Okay, so that's if you're reflecting in the y-axis. The last one is the y equals x line. Okay, so your y equals x line is this line right here. Okay, so it's that diagonal line with a slope of 1. Okay, how we change our original is you just flip-flop your x and y values. Okay, so now it's y, x. So if I have 1, -2, to reflect it in the y equals x line, it will now be -2, 1. Okay, so since y is equal to x, you can interchange them. Okay, that's kind of how I remember it. So in example 6 up here, we are reflecting in that y equals x line. Okay, so again, that's the line with a slope of 1 going through the origin. Okay, so through the origin with a slope of 1. And I'm just going to draw in that line of reflection here so you can see it. So that's the line we want to reflect over. But first, we want to plot the points for quadrilateral ABCD. So point A is at 1, 1, right here. And please make sure you label them. Do not just plot the points and not label them. B is at 3, 2. C is at 4, -1. And D is at 2, -3. Okay, and then I want to connect those points. Okay, so this is my pre-image. Now I need to find the image. So off to the side, when I have a reflection in the y equals x line, I like to rewrite the points. So A prime, since we're reflecting in the y equals x line, that means I just need to switch my x and y values. So they just flip-flop. So this one will stay at 1, 1. B prime, again, flip-flopping those values, will be at 2, 3. C prime will be at -1, 4. And D prime will be at -3, 2. Okay, so looking at those points, now I just need to plot those. So A prime is at 1, 1. So it'll stay in that same spot that A was. B prime is in 2, 3. So that'll be up here. That's B prime. C prime is at -1, 4. So left 1, up 4. Label that C prime. And then D prime is at -3, 2. And I can label that D prime. Then I just need to connect all 4 points. And this one right here will be that final image. Okay, so later on, it will pay to write out each of those coordinate points because you're going to do more than one transformation on a graph. Okay, so if you didn't on your assignment, and I know I didn't on these ones right here, but it does pay to write out those coordinates of those prime points that you found. Okay, so those new coordinate points. You don't have to for reflections, but you will have to for rotations and translations. Okay, questions on reflections, either in a line that's not the x or y axis or the y equals x line. You won't need to reflect in any other slanted line. They're all going to be straight. Okay, but you will have to know the difference between a y equals and an x equals if it's horizontal or vertical. Okay, so just keep that in mind. For the front side of your assignment, please use the ruler. Don't just guess. Okay, you have the ruler for a reason, and if it looks terrible, you're going to not get full credit because I'm giving you a ruler. Okay, so use the ruler. Find that same distance from that line of reflection. Okay, so do those ones first because I know I gave you a ruler in class.